Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we are going to go through a little bit of content creation in the MEP Productivity Pack. We're going to be focusing on building the auto-sizing GRD, specifically the Price Square Cone Diffuser family. And so we're going to take a look at the steps and processes that we need to go through for that. Now, as always, these webinars are recorded, and they will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as soon as they are ready, usually within 24 hours. And you can always come back and review this information so that you can do the same exact thing that I'm doing today if maybe you're not trying to follow along, or if you can't follow along. Maybe you're not on a computer right now. And that's great. We also keep an eye on the questions window, and we encourage you to ask questions while we're going through content, and sometimes we can answer those questions in line. Sometimes we save it for the QA session for the end. For those of you joining us live, we do host a big QA session at the end, and feel free to jump in and ask questions there as well if you want to. Get them queued up if you don't want to ask them live in the middle, and we'll spend some time on that. With that, let's jump into the actual presentation today and talk about today's topic a bit. So in Revit, especially with MEP designers, and especially when using the MEP Productivity Pack, really knowing how to generate pretty much any piece of content you need for your current project requirements is kind of imperative. And it can be troublesome or daunting if you don't know how to efficiently author something within Revit within our family structure. We want these families to align with the MEP Productivity Pack. That's important so that they can schedule and tag correctly, have all the right data on them. We want to make sure that these workflows are nice, neat, and clean, but you got to know how to build this content. And so today we're going through what I'm going to consider a fairly simple family, a fairly simple conversion. Just takes a little bit of time. I spent about a half hour on this myself and pretty much fully built out the Price Square Cone Diffuser, and then I didn't save it. So then I redid some of my work this morning just to pre-test and make sure everything is still working as I expected. And I'm going to show you how all of that works today. I'm going to do it live so that we can get a truly auto-sizing air terminal family for both imperial and metric, both within a single family, and how you can make this work. Now, I've contacted Price. I got some of their manufacturing information, and we're also working with them to make their families fully, truly MEP compliant for MEP Productivity Pack. But in the meantime, if you want one of these, well, you'll have to build it. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that today. We're going to go through a few specific things. We're going to be introducing the concepts of auto-sizing and kind of what that does, what it means, how it works if you're not already familiar. We're going to take a look at the SCD cut sheets a little bit, taking a look at the values that we need. And then we're going to take and investigate how we can efficiently build this family and use the manufacturer's already pre-existing geometry and build that directly into the family with as minimal effort as possible. And then the final steps, we're going to load and test it. Now, very specifically, I want to outline the exact steps that we're going to go through today in this family set. So we're going to introduce it first. I'm going to take a look at the existing air terminal family that exists in the MEP Productivity Pack so we can get an idea of a bit about how it works. And this is the same step that I would recommend you go through regardless of the kind of content you're going through. Take a look at the family that's already there. They look complicated, but they really aren't. A lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the work has already been done, especially for these auto-sizing families. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the Price SCD family. I'm going to talk about what I am going to create today, what we're going to actually take time and invest our time into, and what I'm not going to create today, because there's a lot of data here, and I'm only going to have enough time with you. I've only got about an hour, and I want to show you and explain certain things, so we're only going to be able to go through a small portion of the full family creation in this session, but you'll get the full idea, hopefully, of how this process works. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the original family from the manufacturer. And I'm doing that on purpose because never have I ever found a manufacturer family that 100% aligns with what I need. So I make minor changes to it, very minor changes to it, so that it can work well within the context of the MEP Productivity Pack. I'm not changing any of its data really. I'm just changing some of how the parameters and origin points are organized. So I just check a couple of things there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to nest it into the current GRD family from the MEP Productivity Pack. So I'm going to nest it in and have it be placed, have it be used within the family. And then I'm going to export the current lookup tables that exist in the family, because we're definitely going to be leveraging lookup tables for any of this auto-sizing functionality. Anything that's auto-sizing will have lookup tables. I'm then going to update, modify them, and re-import the new lookup tables that have the manufacturer-specific data. And this is where it becomes, I think, really efficient, really easy, because it's just simple data entry after the first few steps. Is just entering some information, because all the rest of the calculations happen within the family itself. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to do is test the family. I'm going to load it in, and I'm going to place it and verify that I'm getting some of the information that I want. So first off, let's take a look at the current air terminal family that we have within Revit, within the project environment here. So I'm in the MEP Productivity Pack here. I'm in a floor plan over here, and I'll be using this floor plan in a minute. And there's already some air terminals placed out here. In fact, this is the square ceiling diffuser, not the one that I want to use, but it is a square ceiling diffuser. What I do want, and what I will always do, is first investigate my family library list and just make sure there isn't something that's already close to what I want. And if it is close to what I want, I am 100% going to use that as my springboard in building the next family. Now, if I didn't have something in this list that I already wanted, I would start with something like a supply grill or a return grill, these generic families here at the top that are not really manufacturer specific. They're just basic families. So I might use one of those. In this case, since I'm building the Price Square Cone Diffuser, the SCD family, I'm going to take a look at the Square Cone Diffuser, and I'm blindly, and I'm air quoting this, and this is what I did earlier, end of last week, early this week when I was prepping for this, I blindly opened this family and then just plowed ahead, because it looks like it's right, at least from a naming convention. If I swap it out in the floor plan over here, I think it's also right. If I pick like the steel 3-cone, this is the tightest TMS version of this, but it's good enough. It's going to give me what I think I want. So I can either edit this directly from the project right here, or I can right click and edit this family right here in the project browser. Regardless, it's the same thing. It's the same steps. I'm either editing it out of the project graphically or from the family browser, but it's the same, ultimately same outcome. And now from this, I am immediately going to save this family as another name. I'm going to save this very intentionally so I don't accidentally overwrite something that's in the pack that maybe I want to keep. So I'm going to do a file save as a family. And I've already created a directory for myself out here in my little test, MEP custom content creation series here. I have the Price SCD. I've already built out, and we did a webinar on the train crack in earlier sessions. So now we're doing the Price SCD. And you can see I've already saved this family once, and I actually saved it minutes ago, oddly enough, today. Now I'm going to call this one out. I'm going to keep that one in case I make a mistake and am explaining something and don't make a setting change that I really wanted to make. So I'm going to save this today as a webinar on purpose, just so I can keep this as a separate family for now. We can always rename it. I always go into options and modify this to have a maximum number of backups of 1, just because by default, when you edit something out of a project, it always defaults to 3, and I like having as few backups as I possibly can. I'm also using the 3D view as the thumbnail or the preview view for the family, since that's the only view that I have that's reasonable. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK here and save this family. So I'm now saving this officially, at least officially enough for myself, as the Price Square Cone Diffuser family. And so the way that I named it is Square Cone Diffuser, and then I'm suffixing it with Price. And in my case, I'm also suffixing it with the word webinar for today's webinar. All right, so that's what I've got here. Now let's investigate this original family, because I haven't really made any changes yet. So let's investigate how this family thinks and works. I'm going to open up the family types dialog box here. I'm going to basically make it full screen, because we're going to be looking at a lot of stuff, and a lot of this is going to end up being formula based. So let's just kind of expand this all out here so I can see some of these things. I'll be using a lot of this here. Looking through the family, in how these families work, there is in the graphics area here an instance parameter that determines which and I'm air quoting on my side, though you can't see me, what group of data I'm looking at. And this is going to be important for the lookup table later. So I'm just referencing you to this because a lot of my auto sizing here is going to reference and look at if it's in group 0 or group 1 or group 2 or group 3. So there's different sections in that lookup area that determine which one it is. Right down to the naming conventions here of sort of how it names itself and what the actual size that it's pulling back from the table. So this is going to tell us 100%, if we set this up correctly, it'll tell us what data row it's pulling out of that table. So I am very specifically going to be naming my table size so that I can have some key values that I want to know of for pulling back a specific data row. You'll see how I do that in a minute. I'm actually going to use some cool Excel formulas to help me with that so that these all become some unique kind of a name. All right, so this is the main part of that lookup table, and I'll be pulling that out of the manage lookups here in a little while. The other thing that I want to look at is there's some extra properties in the mix, and I'm going to scroll down here and show you where they are in this family, because again, there's a lot of size lookup stuff inside of here. You're going to see size lookup, auto size table, size lookup, auto size table again. There's another, if I look down here, there's got to be more of this. Product design, airflow, blah, blah. There's probably more in there as well. Size lookup, auto size table, right? There's tons of size lookups here. So pretty much everything inside of here references back to this parameter called auto size table. Let's go find that. That's going to be an important aspect for us here. Down here, there is a parameter called auto size table. And right now it's looking at the Titus TMS Imperial properties file. And just to the right of this, you'll see it's grayed out here because there's a formula. And that formula says, well, if there is product data available, if that parameter is checked, and if the product data is metric, then it looks at auto size table 2, which is this guy down here. So this family already has built in the logic of metric versus imperial. If it's not both product data available and metric, then what it does is it defaults over to auto size table 1, which is this guy, which is the Titus Imperial. And that's why this value says Titus TMS Imperial. So we're going to be editing this table for sure, but because I know already that there's metric properties available here, simply if I check the box, the family's metric, it's going to default to this table. So I'm going to be building, as well as an imperial table. Today, I'll be building a metric table at the same time. So I'll be modifying this. Now, I'm not going to extract the GRD placeholder stuff because I don't care. I'm going to be extracting this imperial table, using it as my baseline, and creating from it a metric table and just replacing values that I pull out of the cut sheets from that. Honestly, this is the main part of what I have to worry about. Now, there's some other things from a data point of view here, like some of these data sheets that I should reference back to the Price website. I'm not going to take the time to do that today because this is something you can simply copy and paste to link back to their PDFs. It's not that critical. It's not doing any lookups. It's just a simple data entry. Not a big deal. Way down here at the bottom, there's some manufacturer and model data and some keyword data that I can, well, the manufacturer and model data that I can fill out. And there's also this model number default value here, which once again, I'm going to be pulling from that auto size table automatically. So I'll be having this value filled out. You'll notice this is an instance property. It's going to auto size this instance. I'm going to be giving a generic value here in the model properties. Okay. And I would also have this reference back to the Price website as well. So it's really price data. But for our purposes today, I'm focusing primarily on the auto sizing aspect of this family. That's the whole key. Okay. Now let's take a look specifically at the Price family that I'm going to be working on. So we're going to look at two different things. There's the individual family file, but there's also all of the data that backs it up. Let's start with the data part that backs this up in the first place. So I went through and I opened up their performance data sheet that talks about the SCD 24, the SCD, this is a square cone diffuser, aluminum sizing here for the 12 by 12, the aluminum size 20 by 20. I think down below there's 24, 24. Yeah, there's a bunch of these things here. In fact, I think if I scroll all the way to the top, There's also the SCD base. This is the steel square cone diffuser, 12 by 12, 20 by 20. There's the 24-24 that I had on screen, and then there's the aluminum variants down here. Looking through the data, it looks like the performance is pretty much the same. I think the only real difference is the NC rating properties inside of here for horizontal versus vertical mount is what I believe that's for. So I'm not going to be focusing on the aluminum side at all. It's just more data entry. I'm focusing on the steel portion here. If you want the aluminum, you're just going to go reference the aluminum table and enter that data, maybe make a different data type, maybe have some extra properties in the mix. We're just going to be focusing on, I'll probably primarily be entering data off of the SCD 24-24 so we can verify that this process works, and then you can adapt this for whatever other families it is you want to work with. Okay, so this is the data that I'm going to be working on. There is some dimensional data that's not provided in that performance sheet, which is this submittal sheet here. So I'll be using some of this data here for these different sizes. You'll notice that, well, in this case, there's 12 by 12, 20 by 20, 24 by 24. Their product brochure calls out a 16 by 16. I'll create an entry for that, but it's not in this sheet. So I'll fake some data values for that just so I can have intentionally 4 entries for this. Obviously, you're going through and making some choices through the sheet to pick up whatever it is you want, but I don't know why this doesn't have 16 by 16 if it's in their brochure. It is what it is. It's whatever. There is this secondary submittal sheet here, which is for the SCDA or ASCDA, which is the adjustable airflow louvers. This has basically a slightly higher height to facilitate this adjustability of the pattern controllers. I am not covering these dimensions today. It would be another lookup table potentially, or additional entries in the lookup table with some different physical dimensions of the A dimension, the height dimension here. So I'm not focusing on this. That's really the only real difference that I could tell is that and some of the performance data out of the cut sheets. So I'm not focusing on this because we don't have time for it. All right. So we're focusing on this one, the basic drop-in SCD or ASCD, and we're focusing on the data here from the 24 by 24, just to kind of set expectations. All right. Next, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the actual Revit family file, and along with that, I want to focus on some of the family modifications that I'm going to be needing. I've preloaded this a couple of times. I have a pretty good idea of what I need, but part of this, understanding what those are, is I'm also going to be looking at the family that's already placed here, which is the Titus TMS family. And what you'll notice is that in this family specifically, the neck size is an instance parameter, and it's linked up to a parameter already that's called neck size. So I'm going to be using that. The product material is linked up as well, and that is currently linked to the value product material. Great, fantastic. And there's a visibility checkbox here as well that's linked up to product geometry visible. You could certainly turn this off if you wanted your own generic geometry. In my case, I'll be using the manufacturer geometry. There's only 3 parameters that are needed to be instance-based. If I edit the type of this family, if I look through all this information, you will notice that all of these parameters inside of here, absolutely none of them are linked up to any data values within my family. They're just generic properties, or not generic, they're manufacturer properties that I am leaving alone for the most part. And what we have is just a couple of different types inside of here that facilitate swapping out the correct family within this auto size environment. I'm going to be replicating a little bit of this, but really all I need is the type properties here for neck size, product material, and if it's visible or not. This one's a built-in parameter, so I'm good there. The other 2 right here, I'll just be leveraging those out of the family and making some associations for my uses. So let's go open up now the Titus or the Price family that we'll be using. I'm going to open this up. I've already downloaded from the manufacturer their latest version of this family. This is in Revit 2020. They have 2. One is a return, one is a supply. The only difference with the 2 that I could discover is the connector configuration. It looks like they took one, saved it as, called it a return family, and then changed the connector data to be a return. Makes perfect sense to me because there really isn't a difference. All it is airflow direction. So I'm going to be focusing here on the supply family in today's little example. I'm going to open this up. This is the family as it comes from the manufacturer. I have done nothing to it yet. We will be making changes and loading it into our Square Cone Diffuser family here in just a moment. Let's take a look at some of the properties. In this family, the version that's available on Price's website today, pretty much every single parameter inside this family is instance, and I can tell because it has that word default after it. Pretty much everything is instance. The only thing that I've noticed that's really a type parameter that they have is the neck size, and if I look at their family types, looks like they're typing their families out by neck size. That's it. Everything else about this family is instance-based, which is exactly the opposite of what I want. So I'm going to be taking all these types and deleting them all, and I want this thing to size itself based on a type property for the face size. So because I'm auto-sizing mine, I'm going to be taking this neck size and making it an instance parameter, or an instance parameter, yeah. And it looks like since everything else inside of here is instance, even though there's certain things that are looking at that neck size property, it's going to be real easy. All I have to do is edit this, change it to instance. This is a family parameter, not a shared parameter, and that's fine. I don't really care. Make this an instance. That's good to go. That basically makes these types useless for me. If I look up a little bit higher, I'm seeing the steel and aluminum properties here. They are also instance, and I kind of want these to be type-based, I think. So I'm going to be editing this and making it type-based, and I'll edit this guy and make it type-based as well. Now, if this was a problem, Revit would yell at me and tell me I couldn't do it because something else was depending on it that is a type or instance property, and it couldn't do the thing. But whenever you're going from instance to type, you're generally fairly safe as long as your type value is driving instance properties. Going in the reverse can be tricky. In this case, it was safe. It didn't have any problems because all the other parameters were instance already anyway. So it was real easy to convert this from a type to an instance property. So let's go in here and just take a look at a couple of other things. So their size definition here is based on an integer property, looks like. They've got a 24x24, a 20x20, and a 12x12. They do not have a 16x16 inside of here at all for the face size. They do for the panel sizing. And so I can still have a 16x16 panel air terminal inside of here. It's just an insert that would probably pair well with the 12x12 face size. So we'll use that for our 16x16. In this case, this looks like it's instance-based, and I need this to be type-based. So I'm going to be modifying this, making it a type. If there's any problems, it will yell at me. It doesn't, so I'm good. And in this case, it's starting out as a 24x24. That's the current size that's in there, and that's fine. Looks like their throw pattern graphics out here are also instance. I tested these. They didn't seem to work well for me, so I'm just going to leave the throw patterns off. But in case this ever does get fixed, I'm going to go ahead and make these type properties as well so that I can control this from the types that I build if I want to. Now, I could leave this be instance-based if I have some properties that are going to be driving it, but actually, I probably should. I probably should leave this be instance because there are some properties, and I'll point them out, though I won't be setting them, that lets you potentially control some of this. But I'm going to leave the hide throw patterns as a type property so I can guarantee that I can control it from a type definition. This 4 cone, which is available only in a 24x24 face size up here, I'm going to make this a type property as well in case I decide that I want to use it. And then this panel selection here, because this does affect some of the graphical face, the actual panel on which some of these faces are hosted, I'm going to be making this a type parameter as well. So those things I'm going to be making type. Pretty much everything else I'm going to leave alone because I don't really care about most of the rest of this stuff. Let me just verify in materials. Yeah, they have a property here called display finish. And if I edit this, it's a family parameter. If I wanted this to automatically associate, I would probably change this name to match my name just so that it does the auto association. In my case, I'm going to ignore it because I don't care, but I am going to leave it instance. This needs to be instance. That finish was one of the properties that was associated, and I'm going to make sure that I reassociate that. So that's going to stay an instance property. Looking through this, the rest of this looks all kinds of happy. There's nothing I really have to change. The URL here actually does call out the price data. So if I wanted to, I could copy this and I would paste this in my other family and actually carry their data forward. Other than that, the rest of this here, I'm just going to be leaving it alone because it doesn't affect my family in any form or function. I'm using this primarily for graphics. So if I did want to keep this, Shift and copy, I would copy this and use this as some of that URL stuff. All right, very minimal changes here. There really is very little that I have to worry about as far as this family is concerned. I just needed to make sure that a few of the dimensional properties here were set up to properly be type values, so that up here in my type names, in fact, let's edit this guy and call this a 24 by 24 and just okay that, just to save myself the headache of worrying about it. And let's set this panel selection here, just because I like it, to be a 24 by 24. So that's all I'm going to do. That's it. Click OK. Family doesn't change much. It's fine. It's going to be okay. Now, there's one thing that I know 100% is going to be a problem with this family, but I'm going to leave it a problem and show you what it is when we load this into the project, and I'm going to come back and fix it and reload it. So first things first, load into project. I've already made my changes that I needed. Let's load it into that Square Cone Diffuser family. That's the Price family for this webinar today. And we're just going to bring that graphic in. And I could technically click to place this. I'm going to place the 24 by 24 just to see what it does. Place it. Hey, look at that. It places just fine. The graphics are great. It's the manufacturer's original family. That's fantastic. I'm going to delete it because I don't need it. I just wanted to make sure that it placed on the right face and oriented correctly in the first place. So that's all good. Now, before I go too much further, I want to advance my PowerPoint here a little bit, because right now we are in the stage of loading and placing this family. You saw me load it, you saw me place it, but I'm not actually going to intentionally place the family. Instead, what I'm going to do is go into the family types here. Right here, I'm going to delete all the trash that I know that I don't need. Actually, let's skip that step because it's not going to work the first time. So let's test this first in the 24 by 24 family that's in here, and then I'm going to come back and finish this up once I make one correction. So in here, in the family types, if you remember, there was 4 major selections: group 0, group 1, 2, and 3. Within here, one of the items that's here is a family type. So if I go to the group 0 type, it's looking for an air terminal type family right here. And currently it's referencing the family that exists in my project, which is the Titus TMS, using specifically the 24 by 24 lay-in family. I'm going to swap this out specifically for the Price 24 by 24 family. That's the one that I want to use. And I want to verify that this shows up in the correct place on the family. So I'm going to pull this off to the side and just hit apply. And what I want to see is it swap the family that I loaded it in just now in place for this family and have no errors and have no major positional changes for this family. I'm just going to hit apply, see what happens. Okay, you'll notice something pretty drastic happened here. It slid from this corner over to here. Now, originally, when I was first looking at this, I thought it actually lifted up in space. That's not what happened. It stayed on the face like it was supposed to, but it slid its origin over to here. That's an issue. That tells me that this particular family, it's originating from the corner of the family and not the center point of the family that's modeled. Most manufacturer content, when I download it, its origin tends to be centroid in the family. Looks like Price specifically modified their family to be corner originating, which is great from a placement point of view, but it's terrible for what I need. So I'm going to make one final change to their family. I'm going to change their origin very intentionally. And then when I reload that back in this project, it's going to re-originate itself to the center, and I'm going to be golden. Then I can do all the rest of the work in this family once I know that it originates correctly. To do that, it's actually quite simple. I need to take and grab their center 2 reference planes and set them to the origin. That's it. If I go to visibility graphics, it looks like in their opening up floor plan view, their reference planes are turned off. It presents better than having them visible in the view. So what I'm going to do is turn them on intentionally, take those 2 center reference planes and tell them that is my origin point. I don't care about the names. I don't care about their subcategories or scope boxes. I care about none of that. All I care is that these are the origins, because that's what we used when we align and locked our original family from the Titus content. This Price content here, I'm going to be modifying it so that its origin is right there at the center for those 2 center reference planes. I'm not going to save it because I don't care. What I am going to do is load this back into my project, right back into that Square Cone Diffuser, click OK, overwrite that existing version. I don't care about its parameter values, and we should see that thing slide right back where it belongs. Perfect. It's swapping it out in place now. I can 100% use this family in place of the other family. those were some pretty simple modifications, I think, for the original manufacturer's content. I changed instance versus type for a few parameters. I changed the origin of the family. I didn't change anything about their geometry. I just loaded it in. That was it. Now I'm using it in my family, and I'm pretty well good to go here. So with this, the one thing that I do need to change is a couple more sizes about this family. I have to have a few more dimensions inside of here. So I'm going to take the 24 by 24, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I have a 12 by 12. I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times here, duplicate and make a 20 by 20. And then I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and I'm going to make myself a 16 by 16 just because, well, their product catalog calls it out, so I'm going to have it, even though it's going to effectively be a 12 by 12 with a 16 by 16 face. That's all it's going to be. So let's get these to work themselves out. If I select this family over here, I can see that the physical dimensions of the face size, the 20 by 20 is a number 2, the 12 by 12 is a number 3. So I'm going to be using that. For the face panel, if I wanted to display a face panel, its visibility is on by default. I will be using the 16 by 16 as a number 1. That'll be for the 16 by 16 family now. The 20 by 20 will be a 2, and the 12 by 12 doesn't have one. So that's fine. I'll just do a no panel for that. I'll use a 0 in the case of the 12 by 12 because I don't need a panel for that one. It doesn't have one. That's fine. So we're going to go ahead and make those modifications now. Now, if you wanted other sizes for this, you can make yourself some other families. It's no big deal, some other types inside of here, and just make them with the other face sizes that you want for your grid dimensions you're going to be working with. And then in the family, you could just swap out or make some additional types that have some different variants of those face panel dimensions. I'm just going to have one type for the entire SCD model set that I'll be working with, and they are going to just be those 4 sizes. That's all I care about. Also, by the way, I know that this particular family type here that we have baked in has lay-in separate from surface mount. I couldn't find any dimensional differences really in the Price catalog that called it out for its performance data. So I'm not focusing on the differences between lay-in or surface other than just which family I'm using. So I'm caring more about the physical dimensions of it, a 12 by 12, a 20 by 20, or a 24 by 24. That's pretty much all I'm going to care about here in my family. Okay, I need to swap out these families real quick. We're going to be using 12 by 12 is the 12 by 12, the 20 by 20, any day now, there we go. 20 by 20 is going to be the Price 20 by 20, and the final one here is going to be a 16 by 16. 16 by 16 is what I want to use, and I want this to be the 16 by 16 family. That's it. All right, so that's it. That's my main changes there. Now, I didn't actually modify the families to reflect this, and I probably need to. I definitely need to. Oh, I changed the wrong one. That's the 20 by 20. My fault. Fix this. 20 by 20. The one that I wanted to change was down here, actually. This is the group 3 family selection. So I'm going to modify this to be the 16 by 16. There we go. All right. I didn't actually make the changes to the 12 by 12, 20 by 20, or 16 by 16 family. So in order for us to verify visually that's going to work, let's go make those changes. And I forgot which one the 12 by 12 was. That was number 3. Number 3 and 0, and then number 3 and 1 for the dimensions there. So edit the properties. Face size is 3. Panel selection is 0 for this one. Right click, type properties on this guy. It's going to be, again, a 3 and a shoot. I forgot which one it was. I should have written it down. Let's just look real quick. Yeah, 1. I got it right. 3 and 1. Perfect. That's great. And then the 20 by 20 is a 2 and a 2. Fantastic. So we'll modify that one real quick. Rename. If I even wanted the face panel for that one, I'm going to go ahead and have it just because. Oops. That was modify name. Type properties. That's what I meant. 2 and 2. All right. Now, in the case of the 24 by 24, if I wanted the 4 cone, I could duplicate a type again and have the 4 cone. That's by default, it's a 3 cone. And so I could modify that one if I needed to, and just have another duplicate type with the 4 cone option inside of there and check the box. And then that way it would have the proper graphic for the 4 cone. So simple. right? For cone, there we go. And check the box. Simple edit, simple duplicate. So if I really wanted to use that graphic for whatever reason from their catalog, I would just swap out whichever one it was, and I'm probably using the same ones across an entire project. So then I would just swap out the standard one for the 4 cone if that's what I really wanted it to be. And then when I click OK, that graphic should show up on the family. Yep, there I got the 4 cone. No big deal. The final thing I want to do is I want to link up the properties over here that didn't get linked up. So if I'm looking at this here, the display finish did not link up because it was a different parameter name and I didn't match it. So I'm going to link that with the product material. Visible is already linked. That's perfect. If I scroll down, next size inside of here, where is it? Next size right there is already linked up. So those graphics are already going to be driven. I'm good to go. That's done. The final thing that I need to do is all of the data entry. That's where all the rest of my work is going to be focused. So we're going to be exporting the current lookup table that's in this family that I mentioned earlier. We are going to edit it, and I'm going to show you some very sustainable editing properties, and then we're going to re-import it, hook it up, and then we're done. That's it. If I wasn't talking through all of this so far, I'm probably 5 minutes into this edit. But because I talk a lot, I'm a half hour into the edit. But normally this would be like a 5-minute process to this point right here. So let's go over here and let's harvest out that lookup table that's inside of here. So I'm going to go into the types again. I don't have to author any of this data. All I have to do is harvest it, read what the values are, and work with them. And that's going to be it. So down here, I'm looking specifically for the lookup table that is called Titus TMS Imperial, or IP. If I go here to manage lookup tables, this is embedded directly in the family. Right there is the Titus TMS IP, and right here is the GRD placeholder that's actually not being used unless I'm telling it it's metric. So the Titus TMS doesn't have a metric equivalent, so it's not in there. It just uses the generic placeholder properties from generic lookups. So I'm going to be actually building a metric versus an imperial in this case. So I'm going to export the Titus TMS. I'm going to go ahead and save this someplace. This is the Titus TMS IP, and I'm going to save this specifically. I've actually already got it, but let's overwrite it. Let's save it right here. Overwrite that file so it's a fresh export in case I accidentally made any changes. And then I'm just going to leave this open because I don't need anything else from here. I'm just going to jump over into Windows Explorer and let's open up this Titus TMS IP CSV, comma separated values file. I'm going to double click on this and edit it. And I'm going to see a huge table of all kinds of stuff. And at first you're like, oh man, Sean, this is too much. This is way too much for me to deal with. But really, there's not a lot of values inside here that we have to really care about too much. For the most part, it's going to drive itself. We're going to focus on the values that we get from the manufacturer. And they're pretty well called out. Up here at the top are the titles for all of the values. One of the things that I find works really well, and in fact, stop right here, Sean. What you're going to do is you're going to save this file as something that's not Titus before you make any changes. File, save as. I'm going to save this very intentionally as an XLSX file. I'm doing this on purpose because all of this work that I'm going to invest, it's entirely probable that I'm going to come back to it and make some changes in the future. So instead of throwing away some of the formulas that I'm going to write because CSVs can't store the formulas, I am very intentionally going to save this as an XLSX file because it can keep that. I'm also going to rename this completely. This is going to be the Price SCD, the Square Cone Diffuser. And this is the Imperial properties here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this in that Price SCD folder. And I may have just overwritten my file. Did I just overwrite that? Fantastic. I just overwrote the file that I had very carefully built up earlier. Silly me, and Excel didn't even ask me if I wanted to overwrite it. That is very unfortunate. Well, guess I get to make it all up as I go now. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What did I do? What did I do different? Oh, look at that. I had an underscore before, and now I don't. So we're working with the non-underscored family. Thank goodness I didn't overwrite it. That's gold because now I can go back to this one if I need to. That's why the time didn't change. All right, we're good. No big deal. Now I'm going to rename this tab down here as well. This is going to be the Titus, oh, and I left it called Imperial up there too. Price SCD IP. We'll be duplicating this tab in a minute for the metric properties instead of the Imperial properties here. So my file name is actually incorrect, but that's fine. Looking at this, now we're going to make some modifications. I find that just simply editing this top row in this Excel file and making one simple modification makes this a heck of a lot more readable. I don't have to adjust any of these column widths because normally, like if I was to grab this whole thing and double click, everything gets so wide and it feels unmanageable to me. I don't like it. So I'm going to undo that. And instead, I'm just grabbing this top row and I'm going to right click on this and do Format Cells. I do this a lot with type catalogs and I do this a lot with lookup tables. I'm simply going to modify the alignment and I'm going to set it to some angular degree here. 60 degrees tends to work well for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, these do overlap into other cells over here. You'll notice it kind of overlaps into this cell. It's not a big deal because since they're not actually laying on top of each other anymore, they're not overwriting each other's text, and it makes it a lot easier for me to read, and I can keep my columns fairly narrow. The one that I am going to adjust is this guy right here. I'm going to adjust A. And in fact, because I will be scrolling through this list, and this list can get a little bit long, and I sometimes scroll to the right, and I lose some of those first areas over here, I'm going to take this, and on the View tab, I'm going to tell it to freeze pane, so that as I scroll down, I keep my top headers, and as I scroll left and right, I keep the type name over here. And that, for me, makes it a bit more manageable. This doesn't feel quite as daunting anymore when I can actually organize my data in an environment that feels good. So now let's go in here and change a few names. This right here is going to be the 24 by 24. It's the Price 24 by 24. Price 24 by 24 SCD or SCDA. Okay, that's the name of this little collection here. So 24 by 24 SCD or SCDA. That's it. Okay, great. That's what I want this to be. Now I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to be putting this down below. There's another group down here, which is the 12 by 12 module. Now, if you really want to reorganize this and put the 12 by 12 first, and the 16, and then the 20, and then the 24, you can do that. But since the most common size in this environment that we use is typically 24 by 24, I think, with the others being sort of secondary, this is the default setting 0 in our family. That's the group number is 0. And so that's why that's the 24 by 24, and the others are sort of listed after it. So just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to just paste this down here and call this out as the 12 by 12, 12 by 12. Copy this, paste it down here. This will be the 20 by 20, paste. And again, I don't care about surface versus lay-in because the performance, from what I can tell, is identical, 20 by 20. And then finally here, I'm going to copy this. And my last one that I had set up was the 16 by 16 face panel, which is effectively a 12 by 12. So I'm just going to paste this down here. And this is going to be the 16 by 16. Come on now, there we go. 16 by 16. So I'll basically be taking all my 12 by 12 properties and copying them down, except for my face dimension is actually going to be a 16 value here instead of the 12 by 12 that it was before. Now, I also want to make sure that my naming convention all aligns here. These are all SCDs. It's the Square Cone Diffuser family from Price or SCDA. I'm just going to use SCD. The Square Cone Diffuser with a neck size of whatever the neck size is, a face size of whatever it is, but I kind of like having the neck velocity as a part of this as well. It helps me visually validate this, so I want this to be a part of the name. Here's the deal. I don't want to have to keep typing these names over and over and over again. That seems very silly to me, so I never do that. This is where I use the power of Excel to help me in identifying this and potentially helping me with some of the, I'm going to quote this, quote unquote, model numbers that come from Price. This will actually appear in the model field, but it also appears in some of the data that shows up in the family itself that's taggable. That property here is specifically up here in the sizing, right here, this guy. This tells me the exact row in the table that it's pulling from, but it is not telling me which velocity that it's using. And so I kind of want that. I want that to be one of the metrics because in the data table, the velocity is one of the lookups that I can leverage. And so I want to make sure that I include that here in my naming. So personal preference, that's what I'm going to do. To set this up, it's actually pretty easy. What I'm going to do is put quotes around the values that I care about. So I'm going to steal this property here, by the way, copy that. This is going to be equals quote, SCD space quote. And then I'm going to put an and symbol, and for the next size, there's actually a property in here that's called out as next size. In fact, these are very logically named. They don't necessarily have to match up with the names of the parameters within Revit, but they're very logically named here that I can leverage to match up with directly what the manufacturer calls out in their cut sheet. So I want to use this explicit value here. This is the next size for that particular row. Now, right after that, I'm going to put another and symbol, and quote, the diameter logo, which I didn't actually need to copy apparently, and then I want to do the size over here, whatever the face size is. So I'm going to do and this, the ceiling module A, and quote X quote and ceiling module B. And then I'm also going to be adding into here and quote dash quote and the feet per minute, the velocity rather. Feet per minute. So right there, in this case, I want that value. So when I hit enter now, I get SCD6, 24 by 24, 400. This helps me in my lookup later on. Now I'm going to be copying this down to all these other values. I am what some people might call lazy and others might call efficient. I'm simply going to leverage the power of Excel by double clicking right here, and it's going to autofill that for me all the way down until it finds a break, which there's breaks between these different collections of data. And I'm just simply going to copy this and paste it for the next one. My naming automatically fills itself out, and I will once again double click that, and you're going to see it automatically has the 500 CFM and the 600 CFM, 700, 800, all the values are already here. All I have to do is just fill this out real quick so I can get some proper naming. Paste, oh, I can't copy paste that. So copy, paste, final one. This is the 24. Actually, that's not right. It's not supposed to be 24. It's supposed to be 16. Oops, 16 by 16. And I think this value over here, overall face size, I'm just going to default it for right now to 16 as well. And once again, I can simply copy these values down for whatever those are. So it's going to rename itself automatically over here, and I'll be able to identify which table specifically I am pulling from automatically from this list. Okay, so that's going to figure itself out for me. It's already got this data for the most part ready to go. So let's now focus on the data entry here for this table for 24 by 24. I'm going to pull this to the side here just a little bit. Let's pull up as well. I probably should have done this a better way. Let's grab this guy, performance data here, and let's zoom back just a touch. Let's zoom in here just a touch. All right, so with this, looking at this data, I'm going to focus on just these first two columns, the 400 and 500 velocities, which are just sort of these first little rows right here. Focus on that for today. And I'm going to be entering this data directly into this spreadsheet for those values. It's pretty easy. The tightest product line and the price product line, they line up very, very closely. There's very little work for me here to do. Looking at this, they've already got 400, 500, 600, 700. And looking at the next velocity, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, done, right? Like that's pretty easy. If there's anything missing here, like there actually is right here, there's supposed to be some 900s in the mix. And this list doesn't have it. If you want them, easy peasy. Just go in here and select these data rows, grab this, copy it, right click, insert copied cells. These are all going to be 900s. Just start to autofill this down. Those all become 900s. You can see the data update here. The one thing that you have to make sure that you modify is this design index number right here. They must go sequentially. So I need these to all be 6s, 7s, 8s, depending on what the velocities are. So what I'm going to do is steal all of these. I'm going to copy these from here, and I'm going to paste them in the first row of the 900s, paste. And then I'm going to just fill these last ones in here with 10. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Done. I'm good to go. This should work out just fine for what I need. Okay. Now, for the rest of this, I need to just simply go through and fill out the rest of the data values for those next velocities, because that's how this table is laid out. It's a next size, next velocity, its properties listed here in the little central table. So there's effectively 4 properties that I need to fill out for this. There are a couple of other overarching values that I'm going to focus on as well, and that is these dimensions right inside of here. This matters to me. So what I probably need to do is for the A dimension, which is the overall height of this unit, I want that value, and I want the total height, which is 1 inch in addition to this right here. So I'm going to be doing that over in those properties here. There's a property called neck depth right there. There is a property to the right of that that is called overall profile height. These two marry up very closely to each other. This is the depth, that's the neck depth, 1 inch right there, 1. In fact, that's the same for all of them, honestly. And then the overall profile height is this value here plus 1 inch. So in the case of the 24 by 24, it's 2.5 plus 1. Simple, that's 3.5, 3.5. Okay, so I'll take this and fill that in, take this and fill that in. It doesn't change for different sizes like it does for Titus. That's why we had these here for the Titus product line. Price is just the same value overall for all of them. That's it, according to what this says. So the overall face size right here looks like it's just 24 by 24 for the face. So I'm just going to put that in there. There is a 22 by 22 ceiling opening, which I could put into the right over there if I really cared to. I don't. I'm just going to put in 24 here, call it out, ready to go. Because the original manufacturer's family has already got all the data that I need, so I'm just going to modify this so that any generic geometry would sort of align with that if it couldn't find a proper lookup. Okay, no borders. I'm not doing any face borders on this guy. I don't need them. Everything else here. Oh, the other property that I want to be filling out is this airflow rate and the noise criteria. That comes from this original lookup over here. There's the NC. There's the flow rate right there. So those two properties I'm going to be filling out. And then there's the total pressure and the velocity pressure and the throw. Those are the 5 values that I'm going to be filling out for this particular family. So let's just go check these out real quick. Velocity pressure is right here. Looks like for all the sizes in the 400, it's 1. Well, Titus is already 1, so I'm good to go. 16, same thing. 0.22, same thing. They're already all filled out. I don't have to really worry about this much. The one that I do need to worry about was where I copied for the 900s. Yeah, that's going to be 0.76. So I got to modify that one for the 900 row right here. 0.076. Nope, wrong. Sorry, 0.5. My bad. Wrong row. Looking at the wrong row. 0.5. And I'm just going to fill that out all the way down here. The next one is 0.62. Yep, that's the same. 90122. It's all the same. So I don't have to worry about any of that now. I filled out the one value that I really cared about. The other ones that are actually specific to the specific size here, I'm going to be going through and just filling out, like I said, the 400s and 500s real quick. So how long does this take? Well, let's just go find out. If I go grab this and look at the, where was it there? It was the velocity, airflow rate, and NC properties, the total pressure is over here to the far right. There it is. Those are the 3 main values that I'm going to be worrying about. So I'm just going to put these up here on screen. Looks like 0.15 for all of these. It's a little bit different. Oh, nope, sorry. Try that again. 0.15. Enter 0.016. I'm not even going to pay attention to the old values. 0.019, 0.023. What is this one here? This is the 400 for 14. I lost my place. What size are we on? Pull over. 14, 0.026. All right. So 0.026, and then the 15-inch is 0.028. Right? Just basic data entry. Starting over. 0.023. Just quick data entry, 0.03, no big deal, just putting in some values. Got it. All right, so those are entered. So I'm actually directly putting in manufacturer properties here. I would just continue on for the rest of them, but you don't want to watch me with all those. The velocity pressure I already did. The noise criteria here, they're all dashes. If they're dashes, I can't put a property in. The cut sheet down here says it's below 15. That's all I know, but I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to leave them all be zeros for anything that's got a dash. In those first 2 columns, everything is dashed out. So we'll just fill this in all the way down through the 500s, and it looks like most of the 600s as well, all the way down to the 14-inch. So we can just pull this down here till we get to the 14-inch, and then those ones would have some properties there. In this case, 16 or 17. Looks like the price content is actually a bit quieter than the tightest content is. That's great at the different velocities and neck sizes. The airflow rates, I do want to specify this. They are a little bit different, but not a lot different. This one's 78, 140 is the same, 218 is the same. There's a lot of similarities here, but there's a couple of differences. So I pay attention to that and just enter them where it's relevant. 98 looks like it's the same. This all looks like it's the same. Exact performance as or ratings as the original tightest content. So we're good here. The rest of them, again, I would just go through and verify the rest of them, fill them all in. The last one that I didn't enter was the throw properties, and that's over here to the right. The throw properties are listed out here in 3 separate columns so that we can have that data value available. Looks like 124 is the same. This one's actually 225, so I'm just going to put that in there. 225, 236, 36. So right, all I'm doing is entering a couple of values. This really doesn't take that long. 3, 4, 8. Come back over here. 3, 5, 10. Oh, less there. And this is 4, 5, 11. 5, 11. Right. That's it. So that's my imperial table. I would continue that for the rest of the 24 by 24. I would continue and duplicate that for the 12s, the 20 by 20. And once I'm done with the 12s, I'm going to copy it and directly paste it down in the 1616 area, because pretty much everything's the same except for the face property, that face plate that's out there for the 16 by 16. Not really much different though. So that's going to be it. So I'm going to save this. Now let's create the metric table. So all I'm going to do is duplicate this. I'm going to copy this, move or copy, move to the end, create a copy. And this one specifically, when I rename it, is going to become the mechanical or metric properties. And delete that 02 or the parenthesis 2 right there. And this one I'm going to modify just a bit. If I'm looking at the cut sheets here, there's nothing that says anything in these about any imperial or metric measurement. It's still measured in feet per minute, still inches of water gain, still, NC properties are the same, throw feet are the same. It doesn't change this for metric. What does change for the metric from what I could discover is over here, there's just a couple of data values that update. It's a 300 by 300 instead of a 12 by 12. It's a 500 by 500 instead of a 20 by 20 or whatever, right? So we're going to be modifying that. That's the only thing that I have to modify for the metric, because that's the only thing the manufacturer calls out. Well, that and 25 mil here for the neck dimension. That's it. That's all I care about. So I'm going to go over here in this metric sheet. Let's make this maximized again so I have all the room in the world. Let's zoom out just a little bit here so I have a little bit more space on screen, because there's going to be a lot of copy, paste, and autofill things here. The dimensions for the 24 by 24 was actually going to be 600 by 600, right? Yeah, 600 by 600. So I'm going to be modifying this. But before I modify this, I want to make sure that I'm calling out the length value in millimeters. For anything that I'm changing to metric, I'm going to call it out as millimeters, and that's going to be it. Come over here, same thing. This dimension is going to be in millimeters. Let's see here, drop face depth. If I cared about this, I would call it out in millimeters. I don't in this case. I don't have any properties that I'm filling out there, so I'm going to ignore it. The overall face size, I'm going to give this back in millimeters. The neck depth, I will call this one out in millimeters, so it's not an inch conversion. It's a hard number. And the neck size here, I might call this out. Actually, it doesn't call those out in millimeters, so I'm going to leave it as the inch size. If I did have it in mil, I'd put it in here in millimeters. But they're not calling it out that way in their cut sheets, so I'm not going to enter that. And I say that because if I look over in their cut sheets one more time here, where'd it go? Right here. Even for the mil dimensions, it's calling out the duct size in inches. So I'm not going to fabricate information for them. They've given me what they've given me. I'm going to use it directly. So that's going to stay in inches. You can mix and match your units of measure inside of here. No big deal. Not a big deal. But I am going to go through and modify these values. This is 600. This is 600. This is 600. I'm also going to change my name over here so I know that I'm looking at a metric table, 600 by 600. And I'm going to modify my neck depth to 25. my overall profile height, that was, I forget what that was. Let's take a look. That dimension was 64 plus 25. Okay, so I'm going to just do that real quick here. Equals 64 plus 25. You can absolutely put formulas in here, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. And I'm simply going to copy this down. Double click this, double click this, double click this. Probably could have done all three at the same time. Take these two, double click this. It's going to fill it all out. And I'm done. That's my metric sheets all handled. I figured out my imperials first. Now my metrics from the information that I have from the manufacturer, they're all sorted out already. The names are already figured out as well. Now my 12 by 12, that was what, 300 by 300, I believe. So I'm going to modify this one to be 300, this to be 300. I'll modify this once again to be 25. The overall height is different for this. This one was, take a look real quick. What is it? It's 29 mil. So we're going to do equals 29 plus 25. Does the work for me there. Face size here, 300, 300, 300. Autofill this down. Autofill these properties down. That didn't work out well. So I'm going to do shift select. Oops, control select. Don't autofill. Shift, control shift. I forget what it is. Well, whatever. 25. We'll highlight both of these and then autofill this down, and that should fix it. Perfect. Okay. For whatever reason, it wanted to auto increment this one. Oh, it looked like it did the same thing here as well. That's fun. 300. Double click that. That one didn't do it. That's fine. I probably could have just done an equals there and it would have fixed it, but I've got that all worked out. This one here, I want to get rid of this because this is not good. And then I'll just kind of copy this down for the next one as well. Copy, paste. The 20 by 20 actually is the same value as the 24. So we'll paste that here. This is a 500. This is a 500. This is a 500. And so we will take this. Don't like that. 25. 5. Copy this down. Yep, that one's good. Double click. Good to go. So it fills it down here. That one screwed me up too. That's fun. And I'll fill this guy out as well. For now, I'm just going to copy these up and not care about it. The other one here was this. Yep, that one's happy. Fill that one in. I'm done with the 20 by 20s. The 16 by 16, again, is just the same properties as above, except for, I believe this is a 400 by 400 face. And then it's the same numbers as the 12 by 12. So I could just copy this, just these two and paste. And autofill. And 25. This guy, here we go. All right, done. So now I've got all my information filled out here. These ones can go away, that's unnecessary. I've got all my information filled out here. Yep, that's good, fill it out. My naming conventions are done. This one doesn't look good because I didn't rename it, but that's fine. Just quickly type in the name. All right, save. I've got an existing spreadsheet now that I'm gonna keep, but I have to dump out another CSV for the IP and for the MP, and then use that in the family and then test the family. So let's do an export here. Let's export this current tab to a CSV file. I'm going to do a save as. This is going to be the MP version. MP. I'm going to save it. This is going to be without an underscore. So it's going to be a brand new file, no underscore. Save the MP. Tells me it's not going to support a lot of the things that I did in here, and that's okay. It just strips the formulas, which is why it's perfectly fine to put formulas in. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. The IP file here, same thing. I'm going to do a save as, file save as. Once again, it's going to be the MP, or the IP in this case. Saving from that tab, just save it. Again, it tells me it's going to strip the data, and that's okay. And now I'm just going to close it out. So I've exported to a CSV, I've saved as, and then I saved as from each of those tabs. The interesting thing about CSV files, they can only have one tab verse of data in them. So when I saved it, even though it technically had 2 tabs, when I come back to those CSVs, like this IP file over here, this imperial file now has only 1 tab. It doesn't have any of that formula work that I did. It's just explicit names. It's just sitting out here as the IP tab with the IP file name. That's great. And so this is the imperial, which is all my inch dimensions. So I'm going to close this without saving. I'm going to check the MP file, same thing. It should be the metric version. Yep, 600, 600 by 600, 600 values. This is great. I've got all the metric properties in here that I need now. Save this guy, close it out. I'm done. These are ready to be brought right into the family, and I'm almost 100% done with all of my edits. So I'm going to go over to the Manage Lookup Tables in the family, and I'm going to import both of those files. Here's the IP. Open that guy up. Import, here's the mechanical one, or the metric one. The MP, open that one up. The mechanical properties and the imperial, or keep saying mechanical. Metric properties and imperial properties. Now I'm going to reference those, and then I'm going to delete the 2 that I don't need and just clean up some file space. So brought them in. They're not doing anything yet. We're going to see all this information up here changing in just a minute when I make this change from the TMS to the SCD files. It's going to reference all that SCD data and all the SCD lookup information here in just a moment. So we're about to replace a ton of data. We're going to do hours of work in minutes. What I want here is the file, the correct file, which is the IP here. Copy this. And just because I'm like this, I'm going to rename this guy real quick because I don't like the fact that it's got that suffix on it, because it should just be the SCD without the imperial or metric properties inside of here. And we are going to replace this with, which one did I copy? I don't remember. Paste? Oh, that's the imperial. Good. So that's the imperial one. That's what it's going to look up from initially. And I'm going to paste down here and put in the metric property one. That's what it's going to look up if I check this box for is it metric. So we can test this real quick. Check the box. It's going to uncheck imperial. It's going to rerun all of my lookups for my entire family. And this is going to reference, or should reference, the metric data right here once it's done with that full property change. Oh, and actually product data is not available because my sizes aren't right, because I don't have 300 by 300 or, you know, those metric properties here. So let's just tell it it's not imperial for right now. We'll come back and test that in a project. We would test that in a project if it was metric. For right now, we're just going to use the imperial properties. But up here, let's go take a look. What did it do? If we go take a look at all these properties now, I've got price data all through this thing. Price data, SCD, SCDA. Looking up the data, it's actually the SCD 6 by 24 by 24 by 1600. It's telling me the exact row it's going to in the lookup table and all the performance data about this family and all the physical sizing and neck sizes and everything. It's done. I've just finished my entire family. Now, if I entered a bit more of the performance data, it'd be even more complete. It's close enough for what I need right now, but I'm pretty well done. The one thing that I do want to make sure that I modify inside of here, this is no longer Titus. This is actually price. And this is no longer a TMS. It's actually an SCD or SCDA family. So SCD, done. I'm done. This is it. And I'd probably replace my URLs with the price data, price.com. But I'm done. This family is ready to go. So let's test it. Let's actually, first of all, change this out as well. I want to modify the type names because this should really be the steel SCD. Okay, that. And I'm going to take the 3-cone inside of here, the aluminum one, and modify its name. I didn't do anything about the aluminum, the SCDA, but I could do that real quick here. This is SCDA. No, incorrect. It's ASCD. Sorry, aluminum SCD. And so what I would do is modify right down here this to be, once again, price. And this to be ASCD. And then finally, I need to modify those lookup tables. I probably should have deleted the previous one and just modified it again, but that's fine. I'll just paste here. paste, that's the price. Over here, paste again, and this is going to be the metric version. So my family is effectively done. I can now take and load this directly into a project, and I can test it out. I'm going to save it, so I'm losing my work, but now let's try and load this in and actually use those tightest components on this. Oh, I didn't do one other thing as well. I really should have done a save as, because I forgot to actually swap out which one of these I wanted. I'll use the 4-cone. I will use the, what is this one, 12 by 12, price, there we go, 20 by 20 for the aluminum ones. There's no physical dimensional differences, so the graphics are going to be identical for these. So we'll just leave that as it is. And then finally the 16 by 16. And 16 by 16, and this should be the 16 by 16 group label. Okay, because it's got that information all pulled in here already. It knows what it's supposed to be. I just had to change out which families were graphically represented, whether it was aluminum or whether it was the steel family. And now I can get rid of the tightest TMS. Isn't all I needed. I'm going to just delete this out of the family. It's not being used. It's garbage. I don't know that I did this before, but just to keep this family nice, neat, and clean, one final thing, I'm going to delete out the 2 lookup tables that I'm also not using, which are these 2. So delete the tightest TMS. It's no longer needed. Delete the GRD placeholder. It's no longer needed, because all I'm using is the imperial and metric files here. That's it. The duct neck sizing I'm going to leave as it is, because that's doing some work actually for me elsewhere in the family. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Save my family one final time, and let's test it. Let's get to the final step here, which is testing. Load into project, the actual sample project. Because this has a brand new file name, it's going to be a new family that gets brought in, and I should 100% be able to swap out any families in that sample project for this family, and it should call it out correctly inside of here, telling me exactly what it's using. Now it's trying to place it, and it's trying to place it like on a face or something out here, which is silly. I don't want to place this family. I want to just directly swap it. So let's drop this list down. Let's go pick that Square Cone Diffuser price from the webinar. Let's use that steel SCD that I know that I'm pretty sure, I shouldn't say I know, I'm pretty sure I got all the graphics in there correctly. There it is. Different family. This is the manufacturer's graphics right there. I can see the difference between that and the default one that came out of the box. This is Price's content physically placed inside of here, and it's sizing itself in this case. If I was to change this out, and it's actually telling me exactly which table it's going to right now, it's going to the 1600 feet per minute table. Well, if I want to go to one of the tables that I know that I filled in, I can actually go down here and put a neck design velocity in, let's say the 400 design velocity inside of here. And as I change this, it's going to actually say, well, if you want 400 feet per minute, then you have to be using a 12-inch neck from that lookup. And I can verify that this is actually going to the data. Yeah, this is the 12, 24, 24. It's still pulling from the 1600 table, apparently, looks like, unless I mislabeled something inside of there. But it's trying to modify this data for me. But I can see where it's going to and troubleshoot that later if I needed to. If I wanted one of these other sizes, like, hey, I want the 20 by 20. Well, I would tell it to use design group 2. And it would use the 20 by 20 lookups, tell me it's pulling from the 20 by 20 table. It's going to put the 20 by 20 family in here. It's going to call it all out correctly. This is 100% the Price SCD data being pulled directly into my project. If I wanted a different flow rate, maybe 100 CFM inside of here, it's going to resize again. Give me a different family, different dimensions, different properties based on my design criteria. All based on those lookup tables. I'm done. It was that easy. It was actually pretty straightforward, pretty simple to be able to find this information and actually enter it for these families. I can now build in any manufacturer of air terminal that I want, provided I can get their cut sheets and I can modify that lookup table, because all I have to do is nest their family and then change some properties in a lookup table. It's that simple. All right, jumping forward here, let's take a look. We have talked about all of this content here. Introducing the air terminal family. We actually look at the price family. We modified it, nested it back in our project. We exported the lookup tables and then updated them, re-imported them. And at the very end here, we just tested this content. We use it in the project, kind of proved that it worked. validated all the information. For those of you who aren't going to hang out for any QA sessions, I want to say thank you. We always appreciate when you show up live. We hope you found this content valuable. I know this is a slightly longer webinar than normal, but I wanted to fit it all into one instead of having just a 15-minute webinar later on. So we hope you appreciated this. We thank you, and we hope that you take a look at the recording in the future if you need to review this for any purposes.